He was the most successful man in his building, until a 48-hour delay revealed he was actually living in a glass cage. Imagine a man named Thomas. He isn't an heir, nor is he a gambler. Thomas is what society calls a winner. He followed the manual. He studied, climbed the ladder, and now a high number arrives in his bank account every single month. To Thomas, this number wasn't just money, it was oxygen. After years of sharing cramped apartments where the walls felt thin enough to hear his neighbor's anxiety, the reliability of a 5-figure salary felt like the ultimate freedom. Thomas didn't chase luxury. He chased something much more dangerous. He chased the solved month. He wanted to reach that stage of life where the red numbers on the banking app stopped haunting him at 3 in the morning. He wanted to feel like a man who had finally tamed the chaos of survival through the power of a steady paycheck. But as he climbed, the air began to change. He bought a high-end espresso machine, a sleek chrome beast that promised the perfect start to every day. He polished the metal until it reflected his own smile, not realizing that in physics, a bridge can be perfectly reliable right up until the second it reaches its maximum load. Every new floor he built on top of his life was adding a pressure he couldn't see. He was gambling his future on the hope that gravity would simply look the other way. The ascension was silent. He moved to a building with a doorman. Thomas noticed that the doorman never looked him in the eye. He only looked at the dry cleaning bags or the luxury grocery delivery. Thomas wasn't a person to him. He was a logistical unit of high-value consumption. He bought an oak desk that didn't wobble and noise-canceling headphones to silence the world. But here is the trap. As the outside noise disappeared, the internal noise grew. He sat at that desk, realizing that his high-performance life didn't allow for a single mistake. None of this felt like spending. It was the necessary stage for the winner he had become. But every alignment was actually a new anchor. He was no longer building a life. He was building a stage, and the rent for that stage was his future. To understand Thomas's cage, we have to look at the operational baseline. At the start of his career, Thomas's cost of existence was low. If he lost his job, his survival burn rate was minimal. But as a winner, his baseline shifted. His $4,500 rent, his $1,200 car lease, and his $2,000 in monthly service fees created a fixed liability tower. This is what economists call lifestyle encroachment. It isn't just buying nicer things. It is the process of turning optional luxuries into mandatory infrastructure. Thomas didn't own his lifestyle. He was a tenant of his own success. The 5-figure salary wasn't a profit. It was the revenue required to maintain a zero-margin operation. The shift happened in the office break room. Thomas looked at his senior colleagues, men earning triple his salary, and he didn't see mentors. He saw a preview of his own funeral. Their hands shook slightly as they poured their 4th coffee. Thomas watched a senior partner flinch when his phone buzzed. It was a flinch of a man who knows his entire existence is held together by the thread of a single notification. Thomas felt a shiver of recognition. He looked at his own hands and realized they were starting to mirror the shake. He was building a life that required him to never, ever get tired. If his heart skipped a beat, his bank account would skip a pulse. But the ego is a powerful architect. Thomas buried that fear under the comfort of his next raise. He didn't notice that the apartment closer to the city came with a 30-page contract that quietly erased his liquid savings. The second crack came from a specialized sensor on his car's dashboard, a tiny piece of engineering that cost exactly $1,200 to replace. Thomas paid it without blinking, feeling a surge of pride in his stability. But as the payment cleared, he noticed something unfamiliar, a sudden sense of narrowness. He looked at his bank app and saw his balance not as wealth, but as a countdown. The space in his account didn't feel spacious anymore. It felt assigned. Every dollar already had a job to do before it even arrived. The battlefield of automated claims began. The rent vanished on the 1st, the car payment on the 10th. Thomas watched the notifications pop up on his watch, each one a tiny digital bite out of his survival. Insurance, software licenses, cloud storage, and gym memberships he was too exhausted to use drained his account like clockwork. Thomas didn't feel poorer. He felt installed. He was a passenger in a life he was supposedly driving, strapped into a seatbelt made of recurring monthly obligations. Then, the unthinkable happened. A minor clerical error in the firm's payroll software caused a delay. The paycheck wasn't gone. It was just 48 hours late. And in those 2 days, the atmosphere inside Thomas's apartment changed fundamentally. The floor-to-ceiling windows now felt like the glass walls of a display case. The system's coldness finally met Thomas's biological reality. On the 2nd day, hunger wasn't a concept. It was a sharp pain. He walked to the local cafe, a place where the staff knew his order but didn't know his name. He ordered a simple black coffee and a croissant, less than $10. When he swiped his card, the screen didn't show approved. It blinked, declined. Thomas felt a sudden surge of heat crawl up his neck. He swiped again, his movements frantic. Same result. He felt the eyes of the person in line behind him, a college student in a worn hoodie who probably earned in a year what Thomas earned in a month. He muttered something about a bank glitch, his voice cracking, and walked out into the cold, his hands trembling with a shame so heavy it felt physical. This 48-hour delay exposed the structural brittleness of his life. In finance, there is a difference between value and liquidity. Thomas had value. He had a high salary and expensive assets, but he had zero liquidity. He was a man in a desert with a gold bar but no water. When the cash flow paused, Thomas realized he didn't own his life. He was merely the custodian of the bank's assets. The winner was actually a high-earning pauper, unable to buy a sandwich because the assigned dollars were stuck in a digital queue. Thomas didn't just wait for the clock to hit hour 48. He grabbed his phone to do what any free man would. He looked for an exit. He opened a travel app, thinking of a week away, just a week to breathe. His thumb hovered over the Book Now button for a flight. He looked at the price, then at his pending bills, and his thumb didn't move. It couldn't. If he took that flight, the assigned dollars for the mortgage would vanish. His life now required a very specific kind of month, a month that never faltered. No one gets sick, no car breaks down, no computer glitched. He had built a life with a zero margin of error. In structural engineering, anything that cannot bend breaks. Thomas had built a brittle life. He became a high-value producer and an even higher-value customer. The system doesn't build cages with bars. It builds lives that are too heavy to carry anywhere else. Thomas wasn't rich, he was merely operational. He was a high-performance engine running at redline just to keep the lights from flickering. He stood by the window and watched the sun set over the city, realizing that if he stopped running for just 60 days, the entire architecture of his existence would begin to fold like a house of cards. The shift you need is not in the amount you earn, but in the structural integrity of your freedom. Your first goal shouldn't be a higher salary, but a wider gap between what you earn and what you must make just to stay operational. Thomas failed the test, but what about you? Ask yourself, if you disappeared from your desk for 60 days, would your world still be standing? Don't just think about the bank account. Think about the doorman, the car, the identity you've built. If the answer is no, then you are not an owner. You are a component. True wealth is the distance between your needs and your income. The wider that gap, the more gravity loses its power over you. Thomas looked at his reflection in the glass. He wasn't standing on a foundation. He was balancing on a needle. Because the truth is, the system doesn't need to lock the door when it has already made the world outside too expensive for you to live in. And the month is carrying far more than money. It's carrying you. Thank you so much for watching. If you want to support this channel, consider subscribing.